Oh, I tell you, the excitement right before this one came out, man. I was so thrilled when this book was coming out. I was actually having commissioned a tattoo of something for the Dark Tower. And then the book came out and Okay, guys, sorry about that beginning there. If that offended you in any way, I do apologize, guys, because it's about to get worse, because I'm not going to lie to you. Song of Susannah is book number 6 in the Dark Tower series, one of my least favorite Stephen King books of all time, but we're going to talk about it in a constructive nature as I try to do on this channel today. So into the multiverse, guys. I know it's been a little bit here. I have since finished my reread of the Dark Tower. But before we talk about the ending, we got to talk about the penultimate edition. This, of course, is A Song of Susannah. It came out in, what was this, 2004. This was the first time I didn't have a 6-year wait at minimum, because I didn't start reading the series until after Wizard and Glass was released. That was 1997. And then 2003, we had Wolves of Kala. And then he got a little spooked because he had that well-known accident. He said, well, I don't want to die without completing my series, so I'm just going to rush out the ending of the Dark Tower. And, well, we'll talk about that as we go. Now, I'll say that this book did get some mixed reactions when it came out. Some people, like myself, were not thrilled with it. Some people thought it was brilliant. And I think over time, lots of those things have kind of, a lot of those gripes went away. A lot of people that are discovering the series for the first time, they don't have to wait between these books. They have no problems with some of the things that happen in this book. But again, that's fine. I am glad that more people don't have the problems with this book that I do have. But we're going to talk about it, as this does seem to be, time does seem to be a healer for most, but it was not for me on this reread. We're going to talk about why. But before we do, we got to talk about what is Song of Susannah about. Well, the wolves have been defeated, but the quartet faces yet another catastrophe. Susannah Dean's body has been usurped by a demon who has traveled through the unfound door to 1999 New York. With the help of a time traveler, Roland and Eddie plan to follow Susannah, while Jake will find Calvin Tower, owner of the vacant lot where a magical rose grows. A rose that must be saved at all costs. But despite our quartet's intentions, Ka has its own plans. Jake and Oy are transported to New York to follow Susannah, while Eddie and Roland are tumbled into East Stoneham, Maine, where they are greeted by Eddie's old enemy, the gangster Balazar. But it isn't just bullets that Roland and Eddie must brave. Soon, they will meet their maker in the form of somebody they did not expect. So lots of fun things we're going to talk about today, guys. We're going to begin by talking about what makes the book good or what makes the book bad. We're going to begin with the good, as I like to do here. Look, I never hate hanging out with a quartet. I think at this point in the story, you are going to be endeared to all the characters in the quartet. You're going to love some more than others. You're going to hate to love some people. You're going to love to hate others. But I think you're going to feel something for them one way or the other. There's going to be no lack of empathy for the quartet at all. So you enjoy spending time with them. They are a little broken up in this, and they are trying to save each other and trying to go on their own little quest. But again, we care about all these characters at this point, and I never have a bad time spending it with the quartet. And I think getting more lore and answers about what the rose is. You know, they kind of tease the rose a little bit in, gosh, I think it was all the way back in like Wastelands. So you finally get some of those answers. I might be wrong on that. It's been a little bit. I know they do tease it much earlier, and for years we're like, what in the world is the rose thing all about? I think you get a little bit more answers in this one. It'll kind of solve that mystery just a touch, and it's kind of its link to the actual Dark Tower, and it's quite a big deal. And, you know, you can see why. I mean, you see any artwork or anything for this, you see the roses. You know it's a big deal. And trying to get more of those answers was probably my favorite part of this book, is getting more answers about the rose and about just like the world of the Dark Tower. And I think splitting up the characters does help them get their time to shine. I think that's something that a lot of times you'll see is when they're all together, a lot of the characters in the quartet just kind of stand around. You know, they're all just kind of like following Roland's lead, or they're letting other characters that I won't mention because I feel like it would be a spoiler if I even mention their name. You notice I did leave them out of the description at the beginning. I think that they're just kind of, characters are just kind of standing around not doing anything. Splitting them up into like 3 different factions here, I think it gives everybody their time to do something, to have something to do at this point in the story. And when you're on the penultimate book of a 7-book series, I think it's important that everyone has a role here and no one's just kind of standing around twiddling their thumbs wondering what they're still doing in the story. But I do think it is the shortest Dark Tower book. It feels like the longest one to me in many regards, but outside the original, the original is shorter. It moves really quickly. So it feels like the shortest. So it's one of those things where I say, look, there's problems I have with it, and I'll be honest, it makes me really critical on it. but I do appreciate that it does move quickly. This one doesn't really drag at all. I do wish it was a little longer, but I think with this one, it moves fast because he's kind of relying a little more on the action. We are getting a little bit more of the action in this one. And look, I'm going to give King his credit here for taking the big swings. Now look, some of them don't land for me. That's not a secret, I think, but he goes for it. And I think that's one of those things that he cranks the meta up to 11 of this, guys. If you guys are all about meta commentary, this book is probably one that you adore, and you wonder why I don't like it so much. I think with this one, he had an idea, and any other author, I feel like they probably would have chickened out. But Stephen King has this personality, this reputation at this point. He has all this clout. He can take a big swing like that, and, consequences be damned. But like I said, it's one of those where some people consider it a springboard into jumping the shark, and other people are like, oh no, a series like this is brilliant. Like, look, he teased it in the last book, so it's not really shocking that he goes there. I just really never thought that he would go there. But again, I think for those that it clicks with, it really clicks with them. They love it. They can't get enough of it. For me, well, if you don't like it, well, that leads us into the what's not so good about this book. Look, for me, this book jumped the shark so bad that it almost ruined the series for me. Like, when I was reading it, I was like, I can't believe this is happening. It was like watching The Last Jedi. Like, I can't believe this is happening. I was wanting to believe again, and this is happening. I cannot believe it. That's kind of how I felt reading this. Like, while I'm in the middle of it, I'm like, he's really doing this. I hope I got a bootleg copy of this book or something. This is not the real release. It's kind of how I felt. I don't mind meta commentary sometimes, even when the author's just, winking at the audience or maybe poking fun at themselves. I think he does that well. I mean, if you are some of these people who likes this, he does a good job at it. It's just, for me, it went too far. It went way, I mean, here's the line. He did a handspring over it and did like 8 flips and a couple more hops after that. That's how far it went from me. It truly ruined my escapism of the series. When you put things that we all know. I think what I loved about it was just a sense of wonder about this world. And I felt like it really just kind of took away my escapism. And I just hated that. People are really critical about book 1 because they don't know what's going on. With me, it's like that sense of wonder, wanting to know what happened in this world that has moved on. That's what made that book fascinating to me. I feel like this book kind of takes it all away. And I hate that. This was a series I was absolutely obsessed with. And when this happened, it was just like a friend I knew just died. That's how I felt reading it. I just couldn't process it. It was a big miss for me. Like the biggest miss I think King has ever had. This was the biggest mistake. Everybody complains about his endings and stuff. I will take any of his endings outside the decisions that he made in this book because it almost broke this series for me. Also, outside of that, the Mia storyline might be my least favorite in the entire Dark Tower series. It's not good. It's not entertaining. I mean, some would argue Mordred's even worse, but I digress. We'll talk about that one more for Dark Tower 7. But it's just, look, this is a character, Susannah, that already has multiple personalities. Why give her more? Exactly how many people are in there now? Now, I understand her condition. This can happen. But it's just like, wow, more personalities. And, now it's an outside, I don't want to get too spoilery here. It's an outside source. I think it's just, it never really clicked the way that I was hoping that it would. And when you had a book that I already had something that was really bothering me, and then you give me this storyline I just don't care about, it really dragged the book down for me. I said that I feel like it's the longest book because I'm disappointed in things. I do think it feels like it's too short, and that hurts a little bit because this has never been a series I really rely on the action to carry it through, but it almost feels like it distracted from the goal of the tower. I felt like Wolves of the Kala, I liked the book, but it did feel like, okay, well, I feels like we're on a side quest right now. Why are we not getting to the tower? We ain't got that many books left here. What are we doing? Why are we not getting to the tower? So it feels like it distracted from that. It distracted from the villains that I love. It distracted from so many things. And it feels like a filler novella. It feels like something that, okay, well, you didn't get what exactly happened with that door at the end of book number 5. Here's what actually happened. This feels like something that could have been a fill-in. Like what Went Through the Keyhole is, this feels like something that could have been released later. I don't know. It just doesn't feel like it fits. It feels almost like it's just a setup book. Now, a lot happens in it, but it does just feel like I don't want to say filler because so much does happen in it, but there's just something that feels off about it. And it might be because it's so short and just feels so dang different from the rest of the series that I don't know. It just doesn't work for me. All the people who complain and say, well, it's not as bad as book 1. It's way worse than book 1 for me. Again, book 1 captured my imagination in a way that nothing had at that time. So maybe I'm looking at it through rose-colored glasses. I have some some real passion for book number 1 because it sucked me into this world. And I mean, I just reread it and wanted to know what was going on the whole time. I had so many ideas and theories and stuff. And in hindsight, I just have so much respect and love for it. But this one, I was dreading on this reread getting back to this because I knew that the things that bothered me then were still going to bother me. Because I don't think that I'm going to have a director's cut of this book, like we have a book number 1 at this point. But that leads me to my final thoughts on this before I get to Multiverse Connections. So stay tuned if you want to hear some of those. Before the release, guys, I say this was like my modern-day Lord of the Rings. I was that into the series. Like I said, I had commissioned someone to make a tattoo for me that was going to be the ℏ symbol with like the rose in one side and the tower on the other. It was going to be amazing. And after I read the book, I was like, thank God I didn't do that. Because I was so obsessed with this series. I went from being like the most important thing that was going on in my life at the time to getting book 7 early and not even wanting to read it because I was just so depressed, just so bummed out about it. I mean, this was the book that made me not want to read King for 8-9 years like I did do. And I can't believe that because this was something like I had thought so long, my God, I want to hear the ending of this series so bad. And then it was coming. And because of this book, it made me not even care anymore. And that's hard to believe. Now, I still feel like these ideas were rushed because of his accident. I have constantly said I feel like if that hadn't happened, he probably would have just finished Dark Tower like last year or something. That's the pace that he was writing at for this series. I don't feel like this is where he would have got to if he had just taken his time. I don't know. Maybe he always planned to do that meta thing. I mean, again, with Wolves of the Kala, it felt like, yeah, he was kind of setting it up for it. But he did write 5, 6, and 7 really, really back to back. And he had never done that with the series before. And I think it really did affect it there. And the time was never, like I said, going to be a healer on this one for me. Because there is that one jump the shark moment that was just too much for me. However, despite that, guys, I still think this is a top 5 series all time for me due to the strength of the first 5 books and a large portion of book number 7. But this one, yeah, no portrait, no artwork is perfect. And this is obviously the black eye on the Mona Lisa for me. I think this is an incredible story, but this takes down some paths that I did not want to see the series go down. And it bugged me like crazy back then. It's softened a little bit over time because it's been 20 years, guys. Obviously, I've moved on. I've gotten over it. But it's the same things still bother me. And again, that things don't bother you, then you probably don't know why I don't like this book. That's just it. I didn't like that decision that he made. And I didn't like the focus on Mia. And it's just not really good. But hey, I am glad that I did revisit it and reaffirm those feelings. Not really. It's just one of those things where I said I wanted to reread this and look at it with new eyes. I knew that those things were still going to bother me. But it did soften some things for book 7, which we'll talk about on the next Into the Multiverse. But before we go, how about some Multiverse Connections? Got a couple here. Now, I don't want to go over all the same ones again because, I can't tell you every single time. Look, first, there might be something spoilerish about this, so if you don't want to know anything, if you're watching video number 6 on a series and you're worried about spoilers, look, this is your last warning. I'm going to have to say some things that you might consider a spoiler if you haven't read the series yet. So let's go ahead and start now with the connections to Salem's Lot. Obviously, the big one. Obviously, Father Callahan, of course. We repeat that from last week. Dark Tower number 5. When did I review that? Like 2 years ago? Yeah, so Wolves of the Kala, I think we already talked about that, so we won't get too much into that again. Some of these, I don't know if you would actually consider them. They're a little bit more me, like maybe I'm making these up. I don't know, because I was really thinking hard about some of these. And it's just hard to not go into all the same connections because it seems like everything was connected to the Dark Tower at the time. So I always keep mentioning the same ones every time. I think the breathing method is just something that Sandra in that book does where she's just determined that she's going to have this illegitimate child no matter what. All the costs be damned. Really makes me think of Mia in this book where she's like, my baby is going to be born no matter what. So again, it is exactly a connection. It just really made me think about that. So it's a connection to me. Again, very, very loose on that one. Desperation. I know that there is a preacher who uses the term God bomb in this book. God, G-A-W-D, the God bomb. I don't remember who, but I do remember there's a character in Desperation that does say that exact same phrase. I don't remember who it was that said it, but I do know that term. At first I was like, is that The Stand? Because God bomb sounds like something from The Stand. But no, it is actually Desperation, if I do recall correctly. I'll have to check with my with my homie Jaime on that one, see if that is correct, because he will probably know. Eyes of the Dragon. Now, in Song of Susannah, it mentions that Roland's grandpa, he went to Garland to slay a dragon. And we do know that King Roland killed the last dragon in Eyes of the Dragon. So I think that's it's always been like Eyes of the Dragon always feels like it's like loosely, or it's kind of one of those things like retroactively, kind of like the talisman that they try to put into the Dark Tower lore. But that's a really nice tie-in. That seems like him really just planting his sword in the ground, being like, no, it is part of the same lore. Now, this is a Stephen King book, but I thought it was something that was really, really unique. And it's something that you say Ka has a really, really weird way of working around here. There's this book called Man of Constant Sorrow. Now, this is about Ralph Stanley, because Ralph Stanley is mentioned in Song of Susannah, and the song Man of Constant Sorrow is brought up. And something about this book, I just decided to look this up, and his autobiography came out in 2009, 5 years after this book. Do you know who the journalist is that did this autobiography for Mr. Stanley? Named Eddie Dean. Kyle works in mysterious ways, doesn't it? That's one of those like, wow, that's crazy. That's not really what you call a multiverse connection, but to me, it seems like a heck of a coincidence. Is it? Is it? Like I said, Ka knows for sure. But I know that this is the shorter Dark Tower review, but again, it's the shortest Dark Tower book, and I just don't want to sit here and just complain to you guys for a half an hour about why I didn't like this book. I think if you've read the book, you know that big thing that I'm talking about. And again, I think you can look at it and say, yeah, that's either going to work for people or it's not. And it didn't work for me. It didn't work for me in 2004. It didn't work for me in 2025. But that's okay, because I do still love the series. And I can move past that. Again, no series that's this long is going to be perfect. There's things in Lord of the Rings that I don't like. There's some things that just don't work for me. This is a definite miss for me. But again, when we talk about 7, I'll talk about some things that I feel like did recover for it, because again, I get that reputation as Mike hates the end of Dark Tower. I do not hate the end of Dark Tower. I hate things that happen in this book and some things that happen in 7, but I actually like the ending, and we're going to talk about that ending next into the multiverse. I won't make you guys wait as long for that, because I'm a couple behind here. I still got to do what Colorado Kid, and then we can kind of move on to what does come next. But Song of Susannah, guys, am I on an island here? Does everybody like the book except me? I don't think so. Like I said, back in 2004, it seemed like it was much more divided than now. It seems like people more now are just like, I don't really understand your problem with it. But hopefully I've gotten some of those things across, and not in an old man shakes fist at cloud kind of way. So drop in the comments, guys. Let me know what you thought about Song of Susannah and what you are most looking forward to talking about for book number 7. I will talk to you there.